Hey everyone, I've had a couple requests lately that I make a video on the advanced loot system, so that's what we're going to do here right now. You might be coming back to EverQuest after not playing for a couple of years, or maybe you're coming over from a private server like P99, and if so, you'll probably find this video particularly helpful. I know that when I came back to EverQuest to play on the Ragefire server in 2015, I felt like the advanced loot system was daunting, unintuitive, and overall I was pretty frustrated with it initially. But after I began to use it, I found that I actually really liked it. It's superior to the old system, and at this point I don't see how I could go back. So if you're looking at this system like, oh, I hate this thing, I don't want to use it, take a look at this video, maybe follow along in game, and make sure that you can become comfortable with it. This is definitely the system that everybody is using in the game. In pretty much every group you're going to be in, this is what people are using, and if you're in a raid, they are 100% going to be using this system. So you will want to become familiar with it, and I think that this video will help you do it. Before we get into the practical aspects of actually getting loot while you're soloing or in a group or in a raid, we'll take a look at a couple of other things first. Want to take a look at a couple of the settings that I have set up, and we're also going to look at a hotkey, and that's where we're going to start off taking a look at this hotkey that I've made. Whenever I make a new character, one of the first hotkeys that I usually make is one for the advanced loot window. I've got one right here on my hotbar. I can click it to open the advanced loot window, and I can click it to make it go away. It's very simple. It's just /ADVL. But you'll find that you don't want to be typing that in constantly. That'll probably get annoying. So I've got it set here so I can just toggle it open and close pretty quickly rather than waiting for the window to pop up or go away on its own or having to type something in. Just so that you know, you can also close the advanced loot window by pressing escape like so. But the one problem with that is if you have something targeted and have the window open and press escape, not only do you close the window, but you also lose your target. So one of the really practical reasons that I have a hotkey, so that when I have something targeted, if I want to kill that window without losing my target, I can just press the button and I can retain my target, which is often pretty helpful. So that may be where you want to start, just so that you have a handy quick hotkey that you can use to toggle that window open and closed. One other quick thing that I want to show before we actually start looking at this is when you have your advanced loot window open, you can click on loot settings, and I wanted to show what my settings were so that if you are following along in game, you can get the same results that I'm getting. I have everything checked except for auto loot all, and I mostly don't have that checked for this video because we need to slow the process down when we look at a couple of things here in just a couple of moments. You can set these to how you like them. They each have a little tooltip that you can see when you hover over it, but in this video we're not really going to be looking at these. I just wanted to show what my settings were so that you can make sure that yours were matching if you're following along. So when you're soloing, you're going to quickly start seeing loot show up in your window. I'm going to kill a couple things here and make sure that we get a nice full loot window so that we can practice a little bit. But here you see that I've started to get some loot to show up in my window, and I've got some options along each line of loot here. We're just going to go through these quickly and show you how they work. When you see something in here, if you want to loot it, all you have to do is click the green check mark and you'll loot that one single item. If you see something that you don't want, you can just click on the red X and leave the item. It'll remove it from the list, and it'll stay on the corpse, and if somebody comes along later after the corpse unlocks, they can loot it using the old original system, but it'll disappear from your loot window. Now, if you want to make sure that you always loot the item going forward, you can choose always need or always greed. Quick note on needing and greeding, how that works. If you're in a group situation and multiple people choose need or always need, when it comes time to roll on the item, everybody's going to roll 1,000, and whoever wins, or whoever gets the highest number will win the need roll. If anybody has marked greed, they won't roll at all if people have marked need. So that's up to your group and your guild how you'll do needing and greeding. But if somebody is needing on something, nobody who greeds on it can win it. It's not even possible. And if nobody has marked need, then everybody who has marked greed will roll on it. Out of 1,000, whoever gets the highest will win. But when you're soloing, either one really does the same thing for you. And if we click always need here, we'll always loot that item right off the bat. Same thing for always greed. And then if we don't want to loot an item ever, we can also choose never. And that will mean that anytime it pops up, it doesn't even show up in our list. It just immediately leaves it on the corpse. When we're looking at this window here, of course, we can also see the NPC that the item is on. We can group things by NPC here by changing this toggle, and that'll split up the stacks by the NPC. That can be useful sometimes. I usually leave that on. Something else that you can do, once you get your filters set up so that you know what you always need, always greed, or never on, you probably won't use it, but you can click this loot all button to just loot everything that's in your window. So that'll just loot everything. But once you know that you always need, greed, or never something, that's not something that most of us would ever really use. You also have a set all to drop down, and for the same reasons, I don't really ever find myself using that while I'm soloing, but it is there. Maybe you'll find a use for it. But that walks you through what the options are for when you're soloing and something pops up in your loot window, how to loot it, how to leave it there, or how to make decisions going forward on whether you need the item, you just want to greed the item, or never loot it at all. When you're in a group or a raid, the window is going to look a little bit differently. I've joined a group here, and we're going to kill a couple of things to get some stuff in our loot window. You'll notice that now it's divided between personal loot and shared loot. Previously, all we saw was personal loot because it was all ours. We were soloing. Now that we're grouping, we've got some things in the shared loot window. What we're going to see here, I'm the master looter, which we'll look at in just a moment. But as the master looter, I can do something with these items now. I can right click and I can choose free grab if I just want this to be available for whoever clicks on it first. Basically, this emulates the old system. I don't really see people using this in groups very much, but if something's showing up that way, you can just click on the hand and it will put it into your loot window, and you can loot it if you want to. The master looter can also choose to leave something on the corpse. That is the old system where the item is just available to anybody once the corpse unlocks. All corpses last 30 minutes nowadays and unlock after 15 minutes. So if you leave something on the corpse, 15 minutes later somebody can right click on the corpse to loot that item the old-fashioned way. Other options are that you can right click on an item and specifically give it to somebody, and if you do that, it shows up in their loot window like so. And then you have a couple of buttons here which we're not really going to look at in this video. We're going to look at some of these filters and then this column here, which we'll get to in just a moment. But we had already looked at the idea that we could choose always need, always greed, or never on items when we were soloing. And the same works for while we're grouping, but there will be a period of time before the items are divvied out where everybody gets the chance to pick what they want. Now, on top of choosing to always go a certain way with something, that'll be the default when it shows up in the window, you can make an individual decision for the particular copy of the item that has dropped. So let's say that we've chosen that we always want to need on splintering clubs, but this particular club, I think somebody else in the group or the raid needs it more, and I don't want to roll against them. I can just choose greed instead, or I can just choose no for this particular instance. And the same thing with always greed here. I can change this to whatever I want. Maybe most of the time I never want to loot fire beetle legs, but tonight I want to greed on that particular fire beetle leg that dropped. So you can pick those one at a time that are differently than what you have marked by default. If you ever decide that what you marked by default, the need, always greed, or never, isn't the way that you like it, you can click on edit filters and you can remove those individually in here, or even change them to something else that you prefer, so that you don't get stuck on a decision that you made a long time ago. Probably the most important information in this video that I can give, especially if you're ever the master looter, is that when items are in the shared loot list, that they're going to be rolled on, especially in a group setting. This may be a little bit different with how your raid is handled for trash items, but in almost every group setting, what you want everything to do is auto ask what everybody wants to do and auto roll on the item. And when you pick that, automatically it's going to start a 60-second timer where everybody has 60 seconds to choose need, greed, or no, or if they have default filters applied already, they've already done need, already greed, or always need, always greed, or never. Then those will apply automatically, and they'll have 60 seconds to change that. 60 seconds later, the item will automatically be randomed among those who need it, or if nobody chose need, it'll be automatically random among those who greeted on it, and if nobody greeted on it, then it will just be left on the corpse. So there's a 60-second timer that counts down there, and that's really what every group that I've ever been in does for all the trash loot, all the vendor loot, and even sometimes the big loot that drops. Just auto ask and auto roll on that. And then maybe more importantly, when you have this set all to drop down here, you have a number of options in here, and I just leave this on auto ask roll, and then I can just click it when there's items in the window, and they will automatically start asking everybody whether they want them or not. And then after that 60-second timer goes, it will automatically divvy up that loot. So I'm going to get a good bit of loot in the window here, and you'll see that it remembers what I've already set to auto ask roll, so that the more that as we churn through items, it's not constantly asking me the same stuff over and over. Eventually it begins to remember more and more of it, and I'll just hit set all to, and just click that button over and over, and make sure that loot gets out to the group. While you're in a group, if you are the group leader and you decide, I don't want to be the master looter for one reason or another, you can right click on somebody else in the group, go down to roles and choose master looter, and that will turn that person into the master looter. So then when you have stuff start showing up in the window, you don't have all the master looter options. You can't set things to auto ask or roll. You can't hand them over to other people. All that you're doing now is choosing whether you're needing, greeting, or no on it, or changing your filters from always need, always greed, or never. In the event that you were a raid leader and you wanted to change who the master looter was for the raid, you wouldn't be able to just right click and choose a role, choose the master looter role for that person. You could, but it's not going to work for the raid itself. You need to open the raid window and then select that other person and choose master looter, and that will actually give them the role of master looter so that they can be doing loot assignments within your actual raid. Two other quick pieces of information before we wrap things up here. Wanted to mention that if you're ever looking in your personal loot window and something is shaded in red, that means that you were probably out of the zone or too far away when the item dropped, and you'll need to wait until the corpse unlocks and just loot it the old-fashioned way. To be able to loot something using an advanced loot window, you have to be present in the zone within a certain range to be able to loot the item. So if that happens to you, just hang on and then just loot the item off the corpse once it unlocks. The other things to know, and this is pretty important, really in all situations, you definitely want to be mindful of it in a raid situation where you're getting probably no drop gear, is that if you have no drop confirmation on and something is showing up in your advanced loot window and you choose to loot it, even though you've clicked that loot button, you're still probably going to get the yes/no confirmation for whether you want to loot the item as a no drop item. You want to make sure that you click yes, or you won't actually loot that. I emphasize that here because I've seen some pretty close calls on that where folks had trouble, weren't really familiar with how that worked. They thought that they clicked loot and got the item, but since it was no drop and they never clicked yes to loot the no drop item, they didn't collect it, or they forgot to and they had to go back and loot it off the corpse the old-fashioned way. So be mindful of that, especially in a raid setting where maybe the raid leader is assigning you gear that you purchased with DKP or went in a loot council or something like that, and it's being manually assigned to you and it's no drop. You'll want to make sure to confirm that you want to loot the no drop item. So there you have it. The advanced loot system in a nutshell, basic rundown for you. This should more than get you started both with group and solo and raid play. Hope that if you're super unfamiliar with this, you'll even just get this video pulled up in a second screen so that you can try replicating what I'm doing, make sure that it's working for you in game, that you're getting the same results that I was getting. This system could definitely be more intuitive, it could definitely be less complicated, but it really is a good system. And once you get used to it, you'll really like it. We all hated it at first, then we started to use it and we realized that it's actually pretty good. So get things set up the way that you like them and you'll find this to be very helpful. If you are going through this and you do find this helpful, like the video so that I know that. If you know somebody else, maybe a friend, a guildie, whatever, who's maybe having a little trouble or isn't sure that they're going to like the system, share this video with them so that they can get this information too and get their feet wet using it also. If you have any questions, comments, or other thoughts, leave those in the comments so that I can get to them and try to help out. I provide these videos to be helpful for anybody who's playing EverQuest, and I'd like to be able to answer those questions and have that good discussion. But above all, just want to thank you for watching, and I hope that this has been very helpful for you.